Thank you for listening to the Dead Air segment. This is really appropriate. We're talking about some very, really hard topics regarding missing children. And many of the black radio hosts make a very compelling argument. Actually, it makes you wonder, why is this happening? Why is it that these cases haven't gotten the news coverage? I couldn't even answer that question. Unless somebody brings it to the attention of other people, there's so many news stories that you'd almost not purposely overlook this trend. I didn't even recognize that there was this larger trend. Unless it's brought to our attention, I don't know that any of us would have known that this was happening among the black community. In fact, I don't think any of us would have been aware of any of this had there not been more exposure to these topics regarding the missing children epidemic. In fact, I would be the first one to say that this explains a lot of the concerns we've had, because something about this right now, it really blows up all kinds of possibilities. I don't even know where you would begin on a case like this. Because there's so many missing children in the black community, instead of going down this road, I can't assume that I understand why it is it's not getting the coverage. I cannot assume I even have the answer for that. But I can actually see, by listening to some of the radio hosts, why is it these cases don't get the exposure? I do not know. The only thing I can say is, instead of worrying about why it is that way, people got to find these kids. These kids and now I'm hearing a story about the black market, organ harvesting. This is starting to really, really, really go. I don't even know where I can only imagine what a parent might be going through. I don't even know. I don't want to pretend I know. I can't even assume. But I'm going to play a clip of a radio show, black radio hosts. I have to say this because it's important we address this, because this has to be mentioned here. Why is it that it took this to finally get the coverage it did? Because I don't know anyone. Most of the coverage has been on other topics, political. I'm just wondering why it took all this time, all these thousands of missing black young women and girls, to finally get the news coverage it deserved. And I don't know if that's anyone else's fault. I don't think this is obviously it wasn't done on purpose. I just can't believe something like this could be overlooked, and these numbers are incredible. At the same time, I think most of us, up until less than a year ago, never really followed stories. We're more engaged in other things. I mean, that's the truth. And recently, I think there's been another awakening. And it's not just happening with people who've discovered stories regarding missing children in Washington, D.C. But what's going on here? What's going on here that these kids are missing and that there's not a proper investigation? What's going on that there isn't any coverage? Because to me, I don't think it's really about just the black children. I think that the whole epidemic of missing children is a problem as a whole. There isn't a lot of news coverage about a lot of cases, and that's what I'm trying to ask myself. And I can't help but get this out of my head, but there is an epidemic in Virginia alone. Now I'm hearing that there's over 500 children missing this year, or I don't know the length of time, but 500 missing children in Virginia, in the Washington D.C. alone. That is incredible. That's incredible. So yeah, I can understand the outrage. I could get that. This is outrageous. And for that, I don't know what else to say. I don't know. I honestly want to know why this is going on. I want to hear from the black community. I'm sorry that anyone would assume because these are just white girls that white girls get the cover. I hate that even the thought of hearing that. That's wrong. If that's the case, if that's the perception, we need to change the perception. Because, yes, we have heard that girls are only hoes. I think there has been way too much attention on sexualizing children and black women. Absolutely. Because if all you hear is that girls are hoes, yeah, I could see why some people overlook it, but thankfully, it's not being overlooked now. Thankfully, someone brought attention to this. Thankfully. So with that, I'm going to leave off here, and we're going to let the tape roll. We want to hear more about this from the Black radio host online.
It was reported that more than 64,000 black women were missing in the United States. Although all of the women missing can't be attributed to foul play, the lack of media exposure when discussing disappearances of black and brown people is shameful. It was the late great journalist Gwen Ifill who first coined the phrase missing white woman syndrome. Simply put, it is a term coined by social scientists to describe the extensive media coverage, especially in television, of missing person cases that involve young, white, upper middle class women or girls. Sociologists define the phenomenon as an undue focus on young white women who disappear, with the disproportionate degree of media coverage they receive being compared to cases concerning missing women of other ethnicities, socioeconomic classes, or with missing males. When we look at the overall picture of the missing, black people account for nearly 40%, while only making up 13% of the total population. The media coverage on the missing, however, is quite the opposite. The press is 4 more times more likely to report when a white person goes missing versus someone who is black or brown. These numbers are even more dire when the missing is a black woman. It is easy to name the stories of Natalie Holloway, Elizabeth Smart, John Bennett Ramsey, and countless other white women and girls who went missing, taking over international headlines, causing white communities to assemble search teams and raise money as they looked for their loved ones. Yet the missing black and brown women seemingly get lost as a quick segment on the local news with few gathering for community vigils. Sadly, their stories quickly become yesterday's tragedy. Relisha Rudd comes to mind when thinking about the disparity in coverage of the missing black women and girls. The only major outlet for many months willing to cover the story was the Washington Post, in addition to several other black media outlets. Even as the story grew, major networks failed to cover the story in comparison to the disappearances of white girls. To date, Relisha's body has never been found, and although D.C. police decided to reopen the search in April of 2016, it looks as though Relisha will become another memory of the past. Relisha Rudd's story is the perfect example of how the lack of media coverage is not by chance as much as it seems to be by design. The way the media chooses to handle missing persons cases dealing with minorities directly correlates with the way that the police investigate them. How often do you see an Amber Alert when the child is black or brown versus when the child is white? Social workers in Relisha's case excused her over 30 days of absences by a Dr. Tatum without ever following up on if he was an actual doctor. Dr. Tatum was really a man named Khalil Tatum, who police determined was her actual captor. The lack of follow-up and follow-through on those whose jobs it is to protect and serve the minority often lets us slip through the cracks, labeling black children as runaways or truants instead of captives. When a child is listed as a runaway, they are not provided the same attention as one listed as being kidnapped or missing. This in turn stops the media from treating it as such, leaving the families of the missing little support to find their loved ones. Furthermore, this inaction by police makes black and brown women easy targets for human sex trafficking, which correlates with the statistics showing that 40.4% of victims are black women in comparison to white women, which are 26%. We often see people saying all lives matter, yet are silent when the lives of black and brown people are the main concern. America has a history of anti-black systems and institutions, and the media has been no different in the telling of our stories, especially around those who are missing. It is now that we must, as a community, come together as we have countless times before and be a voice for the missing. The stories of Renisha McBride, Corrine Gaines, and Sandra Bland could have also stayed local news if the power of black Twitter had not made them national topics of concern. It is time for us now to show up and search for our missing the way that we protest against police brutality. Without those series of tweets from @Black Marvel Girl, this story may not have ever seen the attention that it is currently getting. Even still, with so many now starting to get involved in coverage and attention, the majority of the outlets reporting these cases are those with a predominantly African American audience and has yet to get the attention of major network news. As of today, another 2 black girls have gone missing in the D.C. area with, not surprisingly, little coverage outside the local news. We can no longer sit silent while our people continue to go missing. It is time to speak up, get out, and find our missing girls. George M. Johnson is a journalist and activist based in the Washington, D.C. area. Has written for Ebony.com, the Griot, JetPride.com, TheBody.com, and the Huffington Post on the topics of health, race, gender, sex, and education. Follow him on Twitter @IamJM Johnson. That was an article on the Griot. I'm not that brilliant, y'all, but I had to read it. I didn't want to talk about a celebrity tonight. I didn't want to talk about a coon tonight. I didn't want to talk about any of the other distractions that happen out there. This is very important that we tithe our time in cyberspace, and I don't mean just 1/10. It should be the majority of what we do. We have to gain awareness on different issues. We need to use this for that purpose. That was a long article somewhat. I'm not going to keep this too long, but I want to share that and read it out. That way you don't have to pick it up and read it yourself. But one thing I think we should do in our own communities, we have to look out for each other, right? And we say that and it's easier said than done. But as nosy as we have people in our own community, how is it that across the country, 64,000 people, women and girls, 64,000 women and girls are missing? 64,000. Now, you do the math. I'm not near a calculator right now, and it's the wee hours, and I'm not thinking too much or too hard. But divide 64,000 into the 50 states, right? Now, understand that whatever number you come up with is going to be really monumental. It's going to be crazy. But understand the bulk of that number is not going to be in Alaska. The bulk of that number is not going to be in Hawaii. It's going to be in the continental United States. The bulk of that number is not going to be in Montana. The bulk of that number is not going to be in Idaho, because there are not too many of us in those areas, although we are everywhere. So I'm thinking, major cities, places where there's a higher population of us. There's got to be a lot of those who are missing in Atlanta. And of course, D.C. Of course, Miami possibly. Dallas, Houston, L.A., New York, Philadelphia. You know, I mean, come on now. So I do believe, it's my theory, and I haven't looked at any chart. I'm going by this, but common sense tells me that probably within the bigger cities, in the more populated areas, and the areas that have us, I mean, it could be down in South Carolina in a smaller place, right? Because we're there too. And I'm quite sure it would still shock us where we've gone missing. Hey, Seattle, Washington, why not? We're up there too. So we need to use our eyes whenever we see people with children and the child doesn't look too happy, or they may be struggling, or they may show fear. What about the case there, I think it was in Cleveland, Ohio, where you had the 4 young ladies kidnapped for 10 years, was it? 10 or 20 years? 10 years, right? This is more common. I believe it's more common than we could ever imagine. And because they are young black women, whether they're young or older, but to be snatched up, they don't get the media attention. Black women are devalued. Their lives are devalued. We're so quick to call each other bitches and whores, and you know, we don't see the sanctity in our women. And this is what I'm going to say, and a lot of folks are not going to like it, because I've had a few comments of people saying, well, you defend the black woman, you shouldn't defend the black woman. I know we have some sisters out here who have earned their hoochie degrees.